Remember the nice clean fish room from yesterday? Yeah, about that. Stay tuned to see what happened. Hey guys, and welcome to the fish room. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we're unboxing a big box of tropica plants that I bought to sort of fill out some of my aquascapes and to just have on hand for the future. I'm pretty excited as tropica potted plants just became available in the United States. Historically, we've only been able to get their tissue culture, and while those are wonderful and I like using them, sometimes the immediate gratification of a larger plant is just what I want. So we're going to open this up, take a look, and then plug some of the plants into various scapes around the fish room and talk a bit more about it. Now, I have been eagerly anticipating the release of these plants. They've set up new greenhouses in Canada so that we're able to get these plants directly here now, which is super exciting because it seems like the more stops you add on a supply chain, the more likely there are to be issues. And I don't know that I'll be selling these or not. Perhaps in the future. That's a nice thermal bag. Oh yeah, these look fantastic. Awesome. I got a whole bunch of stuff. Things like narrow leaf Java fern, which you guys know is one of my all-time favorite plants. I got some small swords, Echinodorus reni, which gets a nice red color, but it doesn't get too large for a lot of aquariums. I got some wendtii, the tropica version, which is a rounder leaf variety. I got Hygrophila siamensis, just a few stems to throw around. You guys know I don't use a ton of substrate in all my aquariums, so some of these I'll probably leave in the pots for a while. But I think one of the reasons that I'm starting to have some algae issues in some of my aquariums is they're not really fully planted to capacity, so the algae is outcompeting the plants. So I just wanted to add some more plants for that reason, and also just because I love them. Oof, that was graceful. I may have overdone it. Oh yeah, and I got a bunch of Anubias too. I think I may have over-ordered a bit. But that's, oh, and a bunch of Sagittaria subulata. So I'm going to go through and remove all the plastic, and then we'll decide where we're putting all this stuff. So these are my boxes of plants that I got. Again, I think I may have gone a little ham. But everything looks really, really, really good, and the vast majority of this stuff doesn't necessarily need to be planted in substrate. I've got narrow leaf Java fern here, Echinodorus reni in the back. Nice small little reddish sword. We have a bunch of wendtii tropica, some Ludwigia repens, which is a nice red plant as well for low light. A whole flat of Anubias, barteri varnana, which is one of my favorite small Anubias, perfect for all size aquariums. A whole bunch of Sagittaria subulata, which is a really easy carpeting plant. And then the Hygrophila siamensis, which I've never worked with, but it's supposed to be easy too. One of the things that I like about tropica plants is they are labeled with sort of how hard they are to grow and where they go, as well as how big they get and how fast they grow. And there's a ton of great information on their website about plant care, and just historically they're my favorite plants to use. And I'm super excited that these potted plants are now available in the US. So one thing I'm going to have to make sure that I do now that I've taken them all out of the plastic is keep them sprayed down so they don't dry out until I get them all into aquariums. I think we're going to go over to the Cryptcoryne Tetra tank and put a lot of these in there, but also stick some of the Anubias around various tanks. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with the stems, but we'll figure it out together. So we're going to start by putting plants in the Cryptcoryne Tetra tank. These guys have looked absolutely perfect, so I feel comfortable putting in more plants because I don't think these are fish that are going to get sick. They're all homebred by a friend of mine. In this aquarium right now, it's just a couple of pieces of spider wood. It's not a material I generally use, but I had a couple of big pieces and I figured why not. The substrate is anthracite, which is made by Sarah, and anthracite refers to the color, it's not made out of coal, and it's just a nice inert gravel that's very smooth. Eventually I'd like to add a school of Echinodorus into this aquarium. So it was important to me to pick a substrate that was going to be good for their barbel, should I go with a species that likes to dig their face into the substrate to feed. It's also CO2 stable. It's not going to do great over time. It's not going to make a mess. It's going to be easy to vacuum and maintain. And it should provide a good structure for the roots of the plants I'm going to put in there. Now I think what I'm going to do is Sagittaria subulata in the front, some of the wendtii in the middle, a couple of Echinodorus renis, some of the narrow leaf and the Anubias in the wood nooks and crannies, and then a few stems in the back as well. Maybe. We'll have to see. Anyway, I've started just by dropping my water line, and that's simply so that my arms don't get as wet because I'm short in order to reach the bottom of the aquarium. Even with tools, I have to get it up to my armpits. This tank, because it's newly set up, has quite a diatom issue, which the plants will only help resolve that. There's some fungus growing on the wood, which is totally normal and will resolve over time. And yeah, let's just get started. I have all my boxes of plants next to me. I have a spray bottle. I have my curved pincers for planting. And basically what I'm going to do is just decide where I want to stick stuff and get going. So when you get these plants, they're in pots with rock wool. So we need to take them out of that. A lot of times you'll see the bottoms are a bit root bound. I tend to just rip those roots off. And then we can take it out of the pot and remove all the rock wool. You do want to try and make sure you get as much of this out of there as possible. I honestly wish that they could use a better material for this, something like coconut coir that could be planted directly into the aquarium, but I would imagine there's some issues with that because of them having to cross the border. You have to be able to prove that there's not going to be any pests. But I personally absolutely hate working with rock wool, but it's a sacrifice we have to make in order to work with the plants. And you can see that in one pot, this is quite a hefty portion of the wendtii. I could easily split this into several if I wanted to, but because I have so many, I probably won't bother unless they seem like they're really, really tightly bound. Now generally when planting crypts, I try not to disrupt the roots too much, but when they're as bound to the pot as that one was, I have no choice, and that means I'll probably get some melt from these guys after I plant them. But again, as long as this part of the plant is in good shape, they should rebound and send up new growth. So that's most of the rock wool out. I'm going to go ahead and get a bunch prepped, and then we'll start planting. I'm just moving substrate to make it thicker in the areas that I need it for the roots of these plants to really be able to take hold. Now that should happen pretty quickly, and then they'll send runners underneath the substrate for propagation. Now I've created a bit of a thicket there, and I'm not sure that I'm done, but before I go any further, I'm going to take some of this Ludwigia and just sort of nestle it in underneath and around that rock. Now that rock is there mainly to hold the wood down because I didn't pre-soak all of the spider wood. This was Impulsive. But this is a plant that will basically grow as tall as you let it, and it's just really, really pretty. And gets a nice red color, which I thought would complement the fish nicely in this aquarium. And because there's sort of a hole here in my hardscape, I'm going to put just a little bit of this stem in here, and then we'll take Anubias and fern and sort of wedge it into those various holes. And this I'll have to keep trimming in order for it to look nice, but I'm okay with that. I've created a thicket of the Crypt wendtii here, which as the plants establish, they'll send out runners and it'll spread across the aquarium. I'm going to take some of my narrow leaf and wedge it in the back of the wood there, and then I'll start applying some Anubias, and then we'll move over to the left side of the aquarium where I plan to plant a bunch of Sagittaria and then maybe some swords over here to sort of give more of a flow. Now, you guys ask me all the time where you can buy the stuff that I use, and for once I have an answer for you. I try and only recommend companies and recommend products when it's something that I really believe in, and I am a massive fan of Tropica. They've been a huge supporter of mine, aquascaping in general, as well as regional events and clubs. And their products are amazing, and I could sell them, but I don't plan on selling them. But I do recommend that you hit up Kevin Kelly from Brooklyn Hardscape if you're in the United States and you want these plants. He is a retailer, and he really knows how plants grow. If you guys remember, he set up the little tank for me for 10,000 subs, the little nano, that is just absolutely gorgeous and has done really well for me. And what I like, or what I try and do if I'm going to recommend someone, is really recommend someone who does know what they're doing. That way, if you have questions or you have problems, they can help you. Too many times I feel like folks are selling just to make a buck, and the knowledge isn't always there for them to be able to give you the support that you need as a consumer. There we go. Again, that rock is in there to hold down the wood until things establish. It may end up staying in there. We'll have to see how it looks, but I did not pre-soak the spider wood. Now, I do realize that the color is off on these, and that's because half of it was stored outside in my personal stash, and half of it was underneath my racks down here. This is about 6 pieces of spider wood that I've sort of woven together to get this look that I like. Now, as I'm prepping these plants for planting, I'll look them over, and if I see any leaves that don't look good, like this one has a ton of babies growing off of it, but the leaf itself is dying, I'll put this in another holding tank to let those baby plantlets grow out and, you know, set this plant up for its best possible life in this aquarium. So we want to remove anything that doesn't look perfect, just so that all the energy of growth goes into maintaining the healthy stock. And again, this is one pot, and I could easily break this into quite a few portions. Just rip it in half, and then we've got 2 portions. And this is a plant, again, that you don't want to plant the rhizome, which is this like finger-like structure. You want to make sure that that stays where it can get water circulation. And this is one as well that if you wanted to, you could super glue to wood. I'm not, because I have enough nooks and crannies in here that I don't feel like I need to. And again, I'm just planting in groupings because that's what's always made sense to me visually. I'm not trying to make a super complicated aquascape here. I want this to be low light, low tech, easy to maintain, and just nice to look at. And you can see already the fish are interacting with the plants. So it's kind of exciting. Now, it's important to keep in mind that when you're planting these plants, these aren't full grown, so they're going to get bigger and they're going to spread, so you have to make sure you leave space for that. I can't get over how geeked I am that it's going to be so easy for everyone to get this narrow leaf. It really is my absolute favorite plant of all time. And I just think it's really well suited to even tiny aquariums with its narrow leaf structure, because it doesn't overwhelm the scape, but it also holds its own in these larger tanks. This is a 55-gallon, and it looks totally appropriate in this scale as well. And And that's something that's important to consider when you're choosing your plants. You need to know what you're going to be able to provide and what will look good as the plants hit maturity. A lot of times people are tempted to use larger swords and things like that that just really get way too big for their aquarium. Like your common Amazon sword can get larger than like a 5-gallon bucket. I mean, they get huge and are just not at all appropriate for smaller aquariums. I had one that outgrew a 120-gallon, for instance. I have 2 pots of the wendtii left that I think I'm just going to drop in another aquarium for later use. I've been dropping everything up in my Pinto tank up here because it's lightly planted, so I'll just drop these in there most likely as well too for now. I'm going to unpack some of the Anubias to put in here just for, you know, sort of tie the shape of the leaves together in there. And I way overbought on Anubias. I don't know what I was thinking. I have so many pots here, but it's a plant, again, that is super easy, super versatile, and can be used in almost any size aquascape. So it certainly won't go to waste. You can see they're really, really pretty. It's just a really fantastic little plant, easy to grow, slow growing, but the leaf shape doesn't get so large that it looks out of place in a small aquarium, nor does it get nor is it so small that it looks out of place in a larger one. And this is another rhizome plant, so you could plant these roots, but again, you want to keep this finger-like structure out of the substrate or it'll rot. And again, this is one pot, but if I wanted to, I could easily snap this into a couple pieces. I'm going to leave it as one piece just because I like the look of that. And I want to plant to capacity. And again, I'm just going to wedge these in various spots. If you wanted to, you could tie them on, or you could use super glue. But again, with this particular type of hardscape, I don't really find that to be necessary. And I'm just going to stick these around a little bit in that middle section, sort of the way I always do. This is really my aesthetic. Very, you know, easy, simple aquascapes that are set up to provide spawning and grazing surfaces for the fish, as well as hiding places for comfort. I find that when you do this, it makes the fish way more outgoing in the long run. Now these fish, these Cryptcoryne tetras, or blue emperor tetras, are fearless as it is, but they've been spawning like crazy in this tank with virtually no plants or hardscapes. So I would imagine we're going to be able to capture some really neat behavior in the upcoming weeks from making this a more thought out scape for them. And again, I want to eventually get a group of Echinodorus. So let me know down in the comments, what species of Cory would you like to see go in here? What do you think would complement these Cryptcoryne tetras? I'm probably going to end up pulling a bunch of these out, and thinking about it, I probably should have done that before I started planting. But these guys are so bold, I don't think I'll have a hard time catching them when I need to thin out the herd. But I do really enjoy seeing them in this large group. We'll take a closer look at them after I refill this tank and sort of let things clear up. I'm really making a mess of things. And again, I'm just going over these plants, and if there's any leaves that don't look perfect, I'll remove them, or if the roots are exceptionally long, I'll just trim them down a bit so that more of the growing energy goes to the leaves and the rhizome instead of these roots, because these roots will just grow and grow and grow, and finally eventually will attach to whatever surface we put them in. So this is where we're at right now. I still have this section over here to deal with, but I've gone ahead and filled the aquarium up just so that I could take a look at this section over here and see where else I wanted to add the Anubias. I also went ahead and put in a few of these Echinodorus renis, which are these guys, and right here, that sort of round-leafed small sword. I put in 3 of those just for a little bit of variety, and I put some of that Hygrophila siamensis in the back, because that'll get really tall. So right here where it looks a little blank, there's more of this, it's just shorter. So that will eventually, hopefully, grow up so that this makes like a nice mounding effect. And I'm just gonna continue my Sagittaria over here into this section. Then probably do another water change, take a net, clean up all the scraps of plants floating at the surface, and then we'll wait for it to clear up and take a better look. So these are the snails that I've collected from the Lake Tanganyika tank. I'm going to go ahead and dump them in my assassin tank and then rebait this. So I'm just doing a real quick water change, and then we'll take a closer look. But this is basically done. And again, the goals for this aquarium are for it to be relatively low maintenance. I will have to trim those stem plants. The Sagittaria carpet should spread. I need to get some more of the substrate. It wasn't quite thick enough for me to finish over there. And as mentioned, I do plan to add some Echinodorus to this aquarium. And I left the cave structure over here because I may end up adding some Apistos at some point after I thin out some of these Cryptcoryne Tetras. But we'll have to see how it goes. All in all, I think, you know, it's a relatively pretty tank that will be super easy to maintain. And the fish will really appreciate all the plants to spawn in. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the updates on this and all the other aquariums. My hands are exceptionally pruny, which means it's been a very good day. I'm going to feed the tank here in a minute so we can get a closer look at the fish. I need to find my air line. I think it might be out in the greenhouse so that I can run a new piece to this sponge filter. But this is the Sagittaria subulata. Again, I'll put a complete plant list in the description. It's an Echinodorus reni sword. That's the Hygrophila siamensis in the back there. Then we have a thicket of wendtii, tropica. A couple more Echinodorus swords punctuating. Then the Anubias and the narrow leaf. And just a little bit of that Ludwigia repens. But I imagine as stuff grows in, this is going to be a really lovely aquarium. But I want to know what you guys think. So let me know in the comments section down below.